Right, let's start you off here in the United States with a big story that we've been following. Interesting times in America, indeed, notably American politics. The U.S. seems to be on a history-making spree. First, former President Donald Trump became the first ever American president to be indicted on a criminal charge. Next, he had to give a mugshot, again, a first for a U.S. president. Now, Kevin McCarthy has become the first speaker in history to be removed from office. McCarthy's primary critic in the House, Republican Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida, orchestrated an unusual vote on the little-known motion to vacate. A hush fell over the room as the presiding officer closed the vote with a count of 2016 to 2010, officially declaring the Speaker's office vacant. As of today, future steps are highly uncertain as the House finds itself in uncharted territory with no apparent successor to lead the House Republican majority. But in yet another history-making move, can Donald Trump, the former president, be elected as the new House Speaker? Well, former President Donald Trump posted an image of himself brandishing a gavel and sitting in the Speaker's chair. Trump posted the image on his Truth Social platform. This at a time when chaos in the House is taking center stage, even pushing out coverage of his civil trial here in New York.
Would you be Speaker, Mr. President?
A lot of people have been calling me about Speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever is best for the country and for the Republican Party.
Would you take the job? Would you take the job?
We have some great people.
Despite his mountain troubles, the U.S. Constitution does technically allow Trump to become the next speaker. Anyone can. As per the Constitution, the Speaker of the House is not required to be a member of the House. However, it is the rules of the Republican Party which bar him from taking up the role. It says that anyone under indictment for serious charges will not be allowed to take up any role of House leadership. With the House seat vacant, Republicans have set an October 11th vote to choose a successor and are due to meet the day before to hear from candidates. Favorites Steve Scalise and Jim Jordan are expected to be joined by several other candidates. 57-year-old Steve Scalise has long been considered McCarthy's heir. He has been meeting privately with Republicans to muster support for his bid, and he's seen as more conservative than McCarthy. But McCarthy's allies feel that he did nothing to help the ousted speaker during the leadership challenge. Scalise is currently the number 2 Republican in the House. He also faces questions about his physical ability to do the job as he battles cancer. Meanwhile, 59-year-old Jim Jordan, a leading antagonist of President Joe Biden, is also in the race. He's a vocal supporter of Donald Trump and has tangled with prosecutors who have filed criminal cases against the former president. Jordan is viewed by some moderates as being too far to the right and by others as being too close to McCarthy. Representative Kevin Hern has also said that he's considering a bid for the speakership. Meanwhile, Patrick McHenry is filling in for now as the interim speaker. The latest leadership fight is playing out in the backdrop of the clock ticking for lawmakers to extend government spending before it expires on November 18th. All right, for more on this, we are now being joined by journalist Michael Tracy from Glasgow, Scotland. Michael, thank you so much for joining us on WION. Well, we all remember that it took 15 rounds of voting to elect Kevin McCarthy as House Speaker. Do you think that Republicans can come together now and agree on who should be the next Speaker of the House?
Well, eventually they'll have to pick someone. So the nature of the body requires that they achieve some level of caucus-wide agreement. But it remains to be seen how much of an ideological shift any transition from McCarthy will actually be entailed. Because Scalise, for example, Steve Scalise, the current majority leader, really is not all that distinguishable from McCarthy in terms of a political program. On Ukraine war funding, for instance, Scalise has been just as vociferous as McCarthy was in supporting funding for the Ukraine war, notwithstanding the modulation of the rhetoric that they sometimes employ in order to cater to certain restive factions of the Republican caucus. So on the major political issues that the Congress now has to contend with, whether a move away from McCarthy will actually result in any substantial shift in terms of policy preference remains to be seen, I think.
Mm-hmm. And I have to ask this, former U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he'll help as much as he can in this turmoil. He signals that he may be open to becoming speaker with that image that he posted on Truth Social. But how much of this is really technically possible?
Well, if you read the text of the Constitution, which is freely available on the internet for anybody who's interested, it doesn't specify any criteria for whom the House can select as speaker other than the House can choose their own speaker. Presumably, that could also mean they could choose a foreigner. I nominate Boris Johnson. I think that would be entertaining. But yeah, Trump obviously is going to dangle this over the heads of people. Just as a political ploy, it seems to me very unlikely that he would actually serve as speaker, given that he's running for president and also embroiled in a large number of severe legal issues. But to whatever extent Trump can portray himself as the kingmaker of the Republican Party, he's going to probably seize on that opportunity because it will solidify his role as the almost presumptive nominee of the party at this point. But clearly Trump is going to have a significant amount of leverage over whoever the Republicans choose, as he did over McCarthy. I was at a America First Institute think tank type gathering last summer, that Trump spoke at for his first trip back to Washington, D.C. after leaving office in 2021. And one of the marquee speakers there was Kevin McCarthy. So this idea that there are these intractable divides within the Republican Party sometimes can be overstated. Kevin McCarthy and Trump were obviously in affinity with one another. Trump actually complained a few days ago that the Republicans were engaging in excessive infighting. So as much as the media might want to play up the sort of putative policy difference between different factions of the party on the core issues, such as Ukraine war funding, which is, it's hard to really imagine what would be a more paramount issue at this juncture. Trump, McCarthy, and even some of the more rebellious factions within the House Republican caucus are really not that far apart. It's a matter of kind of internal machination, it seems, without a whole lot of underlying policy stakes, at least in certain respects. But I'll grant that there's some pretty severe uncertainty now as to how this will all unfold, because as you mentioned from the outset, nothing like this has happened before in U.S. history, so we should all retain a bit of humility as to how the events will unfold.
Yeah, Ukraine, and also on border, it seems that everyone in the Republican Party agrees. Michael Tracy, thank you so much for joining us, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
All right, thank you.